Hello, my friends, you boys, Seth here, and I'm very excited to be talking to y'all about Citizen Sleeper 2, Starward Vector, which is either out now or is coming out soon, depending on when you're watching this and when this video goes live. First of all, before we get into anything, huge thanks to the fine folks at Fellow Traveler who passed along a code for the Nintendo Switch for us to check this out. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video. This is not going to be like a first look kind of video, nor is this going to be a traditional review. I have already played through the entire game. In fact, this is my save right here. I've already completed a playthrough of the game ahead of release, and I have a lot of thoughts, and I want to share some of those thoughts and also show you the game and kind of some of the things it's doing new. And I think a good way of doing that actually will be to also show you the way the game opens, because the game does kind of introduce you to a lot of its mechanics and stuff. So I think we're ultimately just going to kind of make a new save here and get into that. And I'll just kind of walk you through what Citizen Sleeper is and how Citizen Sleeper 2 has, I guess, changed things and, in my opinion, dramatically improved on the formula of the first game in significant ways. So let's jump into it. Difficulty here, you got 3 difficulties. You've got safe for those focused on the story, a low risk option. You've got risky, the intended difficulty for those happy to be challenged, and you've got dangerous for experienced players who want an unforgiving challenge with no second chances. These kind of like qualifiers, these kind of things that it's telling you about aren't going to make a whole lot of sense to you until you've played the game, but luckily you can change them at any time. So if you start the game, I recommend just starting it on risky, and if you feel like it's too hard, you can go ahead and crank it down to safe, and this stuff will all make sense a little bit later. So next thing we're going to do is choose our class. So this is kind of Citizen Sleeper in general is sort of set up like a tabletop RPG. And the class is not going to be something that you can change after starting the game. So essentially you've got these 5 skills on the right here: engineer, interface, endure, intuit, and engage. And one of those sets of skills is going to be like forever blocked off to you. The others, some of them you'll be better at than others, but you can still like level up and get better at. But one of them you're just never going to be good at. And that's essentially like that's the basis, I guess, of where to start. But all of them have their pros and cons. The way that the push mechanic works, and we'll get into this a little bit later too, is also going to be somewhat important whenever you choose your class. But again, no matter which one you pick, you're going to have a good time. And these little blurbs here will kind of tell you a little bit about the class and kind of what makes them different. And I think they do a pretty good job of that. I think I'm actually going to, because my first playthrough I played as a machinist, and so I think for this video I'll go extractor. Extractor sleepers are built to work at the coal face of corporate resource extraction, often in hard vacuum environments. Extractors have high level of physical endurance, but their confidence means they struggle with tasks requiring intuition. Their rally skill allows them to motivate those on their team, boosting their crew dice. Sleepers assigned to extractor work are often confident, self-sufficient, and have a high level of endurance. So this is kind of like, you know, in a typical RPG or whatever, this would be like your tanky sort of character, right? I guess. Not really a super accurate way of describing it, but maybe gives you a little bit of a tether to something you might be used to. But the push mechanic's a whole different interesting thing, and they all kind of give you like a different benefit, especially when you're out on contracts with your crew. So like for this one, we can actually make like our abilities of our crew that we take with us a little bit better. This one we can like re-roll our lowest dice. This one gives you like bonuses to your lowest dice. So that's all good. But we're gonna start off here with the extractor class and just kind of get into it. There's the game sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is, I find. And yeah, we're playing the Nintendo Switch version of the game. I did notice when I went to start the game up to make this video, there is like a patch available now, so this is a patched version of the game since I played it initially. In the moment before waking, the dark space before conscious thought, you struggle to find the pieces of yourself. Usually these pieces come from a particular cadence, each appearing sequentially like the boot process of an old terminal. First your body, artificial, compromised, but relaying sense data all the same. Then its context, the breeze of air filtration, the soft contact of your birth in 0G. Then emotion, coming into focus, coming into your body, bringing with it that first instinct, the one that has framed your past 100 cycles, fear. But that familiar sequence does not arrive. Instead, you are unmoored in space, your body distant, your context silent, even your emotions somehow obscured and scattered. Among all that disarray, only one familiar thing arrives, the fear. It is a scrambled, panicked fear. The drowning fear, the falling fear, the fear that makes you reach desperately for any stable point. It is the fear that tells you something is wrong. Something is very wrong with you. Wake up, sleeper. The voice is whispered in your ear. An act that makes you suddenly aware of your head pulsing in pain, your body rigid with tension. Sleeper, a familiar name. A mind copied, emulated. A body built, implanted. One person sleeping until their dead is worked away. Their double being made to work, to be consumed, and eventually to be destroyed. A proxy, an emulation, a sleeper. That is what you are. But you escaped, you remember that now. Broke free of your corporate creators, SNARP, in search of a future. You cannot remember the details of your escape, but you know the fear has been with you ever since. All of a sudden you remember you have eyes, and your eyes flicker open. Pale eyes and a pale face. Lane. The name comes with its own specific sensation of fear, one you recoil from instinctively. Sorry to interrupt. A sharp smirk. But this ends here. You search your mind for more than a name. Is this how you reward me for my generosity? Lane is leaning over your horizontal, floating body, looking down into your eyes. I took you in, protected you, gave you a purpose. You try to look away to the corners of your vision to find something you understand. Your body does not respond. But I suppose that wasn't enough. He reaches into the pocket of his jacket and retrieves a small vial. This wasn't enough? The vial glitters. This object you know and have known for a long time. Stabilizer, the drug that keeps your artificial body, your emulated mind from inevitable decay. The only balm for your planned obsolescence. The liquid roiling in the vials fills you with disgust. Lane pockets the vial, but it would be wasted on you now, after what you've done to this body of yours. He looks at you with a palpable disgust. Lane's eyes scan your body, and as they do, you become aware of the wires and tubes attached to you. Those that were meant to free you from your dependence, from the stabilizer and the control it grants Lane. So, that kind of gives you a little bit of a setup. I'm not going to read everything here, because this game is kind of like a, it has like a visual novel sensibility to it, even though there is a lot of like, gameplay here and dice rolling and stuff like this and a ton of decision making, and we'll get into that. But that gives you kind of the setup of what a sleeper is, what this world is. It is a, far future science fiction corporate driven world where you play as these this sleeper, which is like this artificial body that carries with it the consciousness of somebody else who is sleeping and working away their debt to a corporation, effectively. Sleepers are kind of the artificial body is a little bit like tougher than a normal human body. They're often kind of looked down upon societally, and that's kind of the setup. You've got this character Lane, who kind of is like your, I guess, overlord, like the person that you're scared of, that you're running from, and he has in that little opening there a vial of stabilizer, which was a huge mechanic in the first game that has kind of been eschewed a little bit in this game, I think to a positive effect. In this one, you have to manage things like hunger and energy and stuff still, but you don't have to kind of like, in the first game you had to get your hands on stabilizer or you're going to be in a bad way. They have kind of removed that mechanic and taken that off of your plate in favor of other things, and we'll get to that. I think I'm going to wind up, you know, kind of cutting around, because what I really want to show you, rather than just like y'all watching me read a bunch of stuff, I would rather kind of show y'all the game and the mechanics and stuff, so we're probably going to be cutting around a little bit. But that is like the basic story setup of Citizen Sleeper 2. You've got Lane, you are kind of like waking up and you kind of are introduced to the world, the character, and eventually you're going to go on the run with this character right here, who is named Seraphin, and he's kind of your Seraphin is kind of your I guess main companion throughout most of the game, although the game is also very choice driven, and I don't know what will happen to your relationship with Seraphin when you play the game. I'm sure it'll be quite different from mine, but we're gonna take a little bit of a time skip now, and we're gonna get into some more, I guess, gameplay and show you guys a little bit more of the game in motion. Okay, here we are after an escape from Darkside, which is the large kind of like city that we began the game in, where we Darkside being under the control of Lane's Utsobo gang, and we escaped Lane, and we're on the run now, and we've made our way to this little kind of spaceport called Hexport, where we need to kind of find our way to keep moving. One of the ways the game illustrates this, and this is used in a lot of different functions in the game, is something called cycle clocks. So a cycle is a day in the game, and if we go to our rig here, which is our kind of main craft, you can see at the bottom there the on-the-run cycle clock. So each of those little segments on that kind of circle will fill in with each day that passes. And if that fills in before I'm able to do anything about it, before I'm able to leave Hexport and run away, Lane will catch up, and bad things will happen. So we need to make sure that we kind of leave this place and keep running before that clock runs up. So you'll see there on the left too, under the crew thing, this is a new addition with this game too. I can actually send Seraphin out on task. If I press ZL, I can have him do odd jobs to get cryo at the end of every day, which is like the money in the game. I can have him scavenge fuel, which will get us more fuel, which is always good, and supplies. All three of these things are good, and it's just kind of like a resource gathering thing that helps you out of sticky situations sometimes. And I think I'm actually going to set him to look for fuel on new cycles. You can actually see at the bottom of the screen there my cargo. I've got a little bit of cryo in my pocket, no fuel, and 2 out of 5 possible supplies that my rig can carry. So that's kind of where we're at here. Let's get out of this menu, because what we need to actually do with our day is we need to go to either the Hexport Exchange here or the Hexport Docks and see if we can find work or find leads, ways to get off Hexport or whatever, and then we'll get into some of the kind of like core gameplay mechanics here. So what's going on at the docks here? Let's see. I'm going to skip the tutorials because I'm going to be explaining this stuff as I do it anyways. So everything in Citizen Sleeper, and indeed Citizen Sleeper 2, is ran with dice. So you can see at the top center of the screen there, every day you start with 5 dice. These are rolled randomly. They each have different values, of course. I've got a 1, I've got 2 1 die, a 3 and a 4, which kind of are denoting like the value of the dice and what the possibility of success when using them will be. So if I look here at the 2 options I have here in the Hexport docks, I can chat to the crews. There are plenty of crews milling around the docks and moving cargo. They could be a good source of info, or I could explore the docks. Hexport's docks are a dizzying mess of braided cables and flickering signage filled with busy spacers. Exploring is both thrilling and intimidating. One of them is dangerous. One of them is risky. This one is dangerous because I don't have an intuit skill, but I do have an engage skill. So and that's not to say that I couldn't try this, but it would be much more dangerous for me, and it would have more repercussions if I failed. So if I put in a 1 dice here, and if I said that this was the dice I wanted to use for the action, you can see here it tells me that the outcome could be 50% chance of being neutral, or a 50% chance of being a negative outcome. So using the 1 dice here with the engage skill that I currently have, there is no possibility of it being a positive outcome. Same thing with the 2 dice. If I go up to 3, however, and the reason that these have some yellow on them, it denotes that this one has a 25% chance of giving me a positive outcome, a 50% chance of a neutral outcome, and a 25% chance of a negative outcome. So we're going to go ahead and try this and see what happens. There you go. We got a neutral outcome, and that has caused the clock at the bottom to progress. So what we want to do is get these outcomes to progress that clock enough to where we can kind of fill that meter, and then it'll essentially trigger an event. Let's back out of here and see what's going on at the exchange. Is there anything I can do here? Okay. I don't have good interface to impress the brokers, nor engineer to trade scraps. So while the clock here actually is a little bit easier to run down, because I only need 4 pips on it, I might actually be better served working on this clock, or both. That's kind of up to you to decide. What's my success rate here? Okay, so let's see what happens. I do have an engineer skill. There you go. It was a negative outcome, so I did lose a pip of my energy there, but I still got the rules of the exchange there filled. I still got one piece of that filled. Now, energy is important to maintain. Those are those 2 bars you see underneath my dice. I need to maintain energy throughout the day, because if I start a day without energy, it'll make me stressed, and that's something we can talk about a little bit later too. But the only other dice we have are pretty low valued dice. One thing that I do want to do is eat. So I can use some of those supplies that I have to make myself a meal and get some of my... Actually, you know what? No. I should not do that, so I can show you guys what the stress mechanic is. But I can go into the bunks to rest and recover if we wanted to, or we could make a meal and eat if we recovered too, and these are great ways to get energy back if you want to expend extra dice. Again, normally I would do that, but I want to showcase some of these other mechanics to y'all. So let's go ahead and end the cycle and show y'all kind of what happens on a new day here. Oh, here, Seraphin's talking to us. We're in trouble, sleeper. Seraphin leans into the bunks as you're getting up. Without further explanation, he disappears down the corridor towards the rear of the ship. You drift out into the passage, pulling on your clothes, and glide down the length of the rig, the cool air making you shiver. Seraphin is a silhouette silently leading the way. He stops at the far end, diverting through a side door, shooting you a glance as he does. You find Seraphin inside, holding one of a tangle of arm-thick tubes that are waving in the zero-G engine room. You know what these are? Tell me. These are the engine's feed lines. He waves one in the air, and before you ask, no, they aren't supposed to be waggling loose. What happened? These must have broken loose when we pushed the ship hard on our way out of Darkside. He looks at the mess. We're lucky the reserve tank is empty otherwise. He shakes his head. It would have been bad. But, he pushes the pipe to the side, no feed from the reserve tank means that the rig's range is limited to the local region only. He thumps the large lumpen housing of the engine. This thing can't take us anywhere far, so we fix it. That's the short of it. Seraphin whacks the engine housing again, harder this time. Just not been our run of luck. He turns and starts gathering the tangled feed lines, his frustration evident in the violence of his movements. We'll need a new set of these, that's for sure. He starts forcing them into a crate. So how about you try to track them down? I'll take a look at things here and see if I can figure out another fix for the reserve tank. He glances up from his work. From what I've heard on Hexport, Factory Row is the place to find ship fitters. Maybe you can do some recon while I sort this place out. It's on the other side of the station. Okay, I'll take a look. Seraphin keeps working. Wait. Seraphin pauses, seemingly unsure. There's something else. He drops the feed lines and they float, waving into the air like tubular seaweed. I've heard word that Lane's on the hunt. He frowns. A message went out everywhere in the local radius of Darkside. He's looking for us, and we can't leave. Exactly. Seraphin sighs, which is why we need those feed lines. I'm gonna try to work something out. Maybe I can improvise a solution. I don't know. He looks down. I'm no ship fitter. But while I do, you go hunting. See what you can turn up, okay? He smiles a weak smile. Get going. You leave the engine room, the clanking sound of Seraphin's cleanup efforts echoing through the ship. Fuel feed lines. That's the next step. You take a deep breath and head out. Okay. So that is a drive that we just picked up. If we hit L, we can see our active and complete drives. Drives essentially are missions. So we have a major drive right now, not a minor drive or like a side quest. We have a major drive to escape Hexport. So, and to do that, our objective is to find a ship fitter. Now we can toggle tracking, which is handy, which means that we can like kind of have a little, you see that like kind of yellow blip above the factory row icon there. That is as a result of us tracking the objective. So here we go. This, just like the other ones back there, have drives, or have these little skills. My endurance skill has actually got a plus to it. So if you notice, when I slot this 4 dice in here, because I have a plus in that endurance skill, it actually upgrades the dice. So it turns it from a 4 dice to a 5 dice. And it would also turn like a 3 dice to a 4 dice, you know, and that's because I have the extra endurance skill. I'm proficient in that skill. So I have a 50% positive outcome chance and a 50% neutral outcome chance because of that. So we can go ahead and start that. And look, we got a neutral outcome. We got +2 to trusted supplier, and we got -1 to our energy. So we're now starving. So this is kind of what I wanted to show you before. So if you are starving and you don't recover your energy before you like end the day, you will run the risk of breaking one of your dice, which is really not something you want to do, because then you have to worry about getting it repaired and you have less to work with on your next day. So it's pretty imperative that you manage your stress, and you manage your energy level. You don't want that. The stress too at the top of the screen, those little red dots denote your stress level, and stress is actually handled a little bit differently when you're out on jobs versus when you're kind of like in city hubs. But yeah, TLDR, you never want to be starving, and you never want to be stressed if you can help it. So what I'm going to do now is what I was kind of doing before, and I ended up stopping myself. I'm going to go to the galley. I'm going to make myself a meal. That way I have plenty of energy to work with. I'm no longer starving. I'm no longer at risk of incurring stress at the end of the day. So that's kind of our core mechanics here. That's kind of how, and again, this all seems, I think, more complicated than it actually is once you get into it. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make one last kind of cut, and I'm going to get us into the game's first like contract, which is probably the last like major new change with this game. And I'm going to walk y'all through what the contracts are, kind of share some final thoughts on the game, and talk a little bit more about it. And yeah, let's get into a contract. Okay, and here we are on the map screen, which has actually 2 available contracts. So we found a character named Karsten who he's a ship fitter and has the fuel lines we're looking for. However, the dilemma that we have now is that they cost 400 cryo, which is very expensive, or we can just do this little job for him. That seems easy, right? Nothing could possibly go wrong. However, we brought that back to Seraphin, and Seraphin said, well, we could also just try to come up with the money and take on some other contracts. So this is just an example of like the kind of player choice that happens in Citizen Sleeper all the time. Along the way, we picked up kind of a straggler named Junie, who says that she is working with Karsten as well, who has joined our local crew. We also helped a guy who was running into some trouble with some of the Hexport kind of guards, and helped him out, and his sister also kind of joined our local crew. So we've actually kind of picked up a little bit of a crew here that we can take on to these contracts with us if we want to. And I think what we're actually going to do for the purposes of this video, you can see that the contract for Karsten, the requirement there is to extract the data core that Karsten is after, and the payment is the feed lines. The job here is to disable a signal source, and the payment is 200 cryo, which would get us halfway to what we need anyway. So I think for the purposes of this video, we're going to go for the safer option. We're going to confirm our vector here. Hey, that's in the title of the game. We have Seraphin here as a locked crew member. Junie's not available for this one because she's for the Karsten one. But we do have Nia here, who's the sister I was telling you all about. We can go ahead and select her and add her to our crew for this job. And we can go ahead and travel to the contract. And luckily we've got enough fuel to go to that contract. And this is kind of where the game's like big new mechanical thing comes from. It's a drone. Seraphin spots the signal source first, the light barely shimmering off its dark hull plating, a design trait that betrays its covert use. A flash catches your attention and you see a rent in the hull, through which red lights pulse. Wounded. Seraphin shakes his head. Wish they'd finished the job. You've seen one before? Seraphin looks back over his shoulder towards you. We've seen one before, don't you? He sighs. Sorry, I know it isn't your fault. There's this kind of recurring thing because I don't have any of my memories, and Seraphin and I clearly have like a past pre-existing relationship, and it can be frustrating, I guess, that I don't remember. He looks at the drone. Lane had us work on one in a dark side bay, though it was barely a shell, disarmed and deactivated. He had us searching through its guts for salvage. Whoops. Even that one gave me the creeps, and it had its core ripped out. He pushes the ship closer. This one is still alive. Conway. Nia kisses her teeth. Corporate scum. You glance over at her and see the fire in her bright eyes. They don't even dare to come here and force us out themselves. It's all proxies and drones. She shakes her head. Typical core-bred cowards. Run into them before? She glances at you. You might say that. She looks out the drone. You won't see me taking my eyes off that thing for a second. Seraphin carefully guides the ship closer. You watch the drone. System is full of these things now, running missions for their operators. Rare to see one out in the belt, though. Maybe got hit during a run-in with the Senate Stat Mercs. It looks like it's drifting. Most of the system's blown out, but look, there. He jabs a finger towards a red light on the far side of the drone. It's still broadcasting, and maybe even receiving. How do we shut it off? Seraphin brings you even ever closer. What I remember from the dark side job is that the central core and the broadcast array need to be shut off to kill these things. Core will turn off local systems, and the broadcast array will sever the link with the Conway operators. Seraphin swallows. But you can bet those systems are protected. We'll let Seraphin explain. Your attention is suddenly drawn by a shudder from the drone, like a tremor running along its length. This thing is rigged to blow, Sleeper. He frowns. We go slow and careful, and we don't touch anything we don't know about. He turns back to Nia. You hear that? I got you. She looks sincere. Seraphin brings the rig to a stop, close enough for you to cross through open space to reach the drone's hull. Let's suit up. You head down to the airlock to prepare. As you get suited up, you think of the corporate war taking place in the inner system, the war that this drone was driven from. Out here on the shore of the conflict, the biggest danger is that this flotsam and jetsam drifting in with the tides and orbits of the system might, one cycle, bring the war with it. For now, the belt is outside of its reach, but looking out at the red pulsing drone, that doesn't give you much comfort. So here we are. We're on our first contract. We have a few things to consider here. This functions very differently from the moment-to-moment stuff in like city hubs. So we still have our kind of lane clock here ticking away, which we do need to consider. You can see at the bottom middle there the drone stress. So we need to be careful, because if we fail too much and if we build up too much of that drone stress, the drone will explode and we'll fail the mission here. And we don't want that. We also have, you can see, rather than my typical energy bar that I normally have, you can see it says supplies 3. The amount of supplies that you have when you come into a contract will determine like how the crew is like fed and maintained and throughout the course of the contract. So if I basically have like 3 days, 3 cycles that I can comfortably work on this contract and make sure that everybody is fed and nobody incurs any stress. After that point, if the contract takes even longer and I run out of supplies, then people will start to incur stress. So, okay, we have 2 things we can do here. We have the access hatch and hull damage. So we have a clock here. There's a identify route and create opening. So now y'all might remember from earlier, I have proficiency with the endure skill, and you can actually see on the right, I'm the yellow icon, and you can see that I have a plus there for endure. The nice thing about contracts is you can bring your crew and they each get 2 dice as well, and they also each have their own specializations. So you can see that Nia here has got a +2 Intuit. So even though I am terrible at Intuit, and so is Seraphin, I can use her dice there, and in fact she has a really good dice in Intuit, and I can actually get a pip of identify route here with 100% positive success rate. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Yes, please. And there you go. Now we have 2 pips into the broadcast access, which is something that we need for this contract. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the create opening side, which will still feed into the same broadcast access wheel. But because I'm good with endure, I'm going to go ahead and chip away at this with some of my better dice. Okay. I've got 1 more 4 dice that'll be bumped up to a 5. Okay, so overall, pretty solid little, we basically got like halfway through that goal there. Let's pop over here and see if there's something that Seraphin can help us out with over here. I assume, it doesn't look like there really is much of one, but it's kind of okay because Seraphin has a pretty good dice there anyway, and I don't want that to go to waste. Let's actually see if there's anything. Seraphin, he's not positive with endure, but he's not bad with it either. So let's go ahead and put that in there, and we'll go ahead and use that for crate opening there. Pretty solid. So normally I would feel a little bit more comfortable to do risky things like use some of my smaller dice to chip away at some of these. But because I basically only get like 4 bites at the apple there with the drone stress thing, and this is kind of like a fragile job, I'm going to do my best to play this as safe as I can and not use like these 1 or 2 dice that, you know, have a very low chance of actually being successful. So I think we're actually going to end the cycle here. Oh, we can't do anything with that yet. I did not mean to hit that. Okay, and again, we're supplied for 3 cycles, so we're good. Nobody's going to incur any stress from that, and we actually got a pretty good roll for our dice for this cycle. So this actually, I feel pretty good about this. I think we can actually probably complete the broadcast access clock on this cycle. Let's go ahead and try to work on this with my endure. Okay, not a positive outcome. This actually has a 25% chance of being a negative outcome, but let's try it. Okay, we got a neutral outcome. Okay, 1 more. Let's push our luck a little bit. Oh, okay, see, that was a negative outcome, and so we took a little bit of drone stress. Okay, now this is where the push mechanic can actually come in. So if I click my left stick, I have something called, and this is particular to my class, rally config +1 stress and +2 to lowest crew dice. So I can push, give myself a point of stress, but all of my crew's dice got improved there when I did that. So I can do that on contracts and essentially like spend my own personal stress to improve situations for my crew. And every class has their own kind of version of that, and it's good for situations like this where I'm kind of in a pinch. I had a bad outcome. I want to kind of give myself a bit of a security blanket, and kind of come into these with a little bit more chance for a positive outcome. So that's what we're gonna do here. Okay, 1 more should do it. This is a little bit of a risk. But let's see if we can pull it off. Okay, beautiful. So we got that. You hear the bleeping immediately. Among the chambers and cabling of the drone's interior, something has started counting down. Guys? Nia's voice comes hissing through the suit's comm channel. Does anyone else hear that? Because I'm getting nervous. Shit. Seraphine's voice joins her. This is what I was worried about. Are we screwed? I can't be sure. Seraphine has dropped his voice to a whisper as if that might make a difference. Either this thing is about to send out a distress call or it's about to blow. We've got to shut this system down fast. He pauses. Then we move on to the other side because I bet you there's a surprise waiting for us there too. We good? Nia sounds tense. Am I heading back to the ship or what? Seraphine cuts in. We're good. We keep going. He shuts off the channel. You take a moment in the silence. Alright, time to deal with this fast, then get over to the other side before something happens. Okay, so as you can see, we've got this kind of like 3 clock countdown here. Or, no, it looks like maybe it's more than 3. Okay, so we have a drone death, so we need to go ahead and take care of that. We need to disable the array, and we don't want the drone countermeasure to come in with that 3 clock cycle. So this is what we're kind of trying to avoid. We do, thankfully, have Nia's good intuit skill here. So this is 100% positive. Let's see what this does for us. Okay, great. That gave us 2 for the core disabled. And let's see if we can pull off that 3rd one there. Okay, sick. So we're half of the way there. We disconnected the backup on that side, and now that drone death clock is halfway done. So now we need to pull off the same thing over here, but the remaining dice that we have are not great. I still have 3 cycles to pull this off, so we're going to go ahead and, I think, end this cycle. And hopefully we get a decent roll for this new cycle so that we can kind of finish up this job here. Okay, so yeah. You can see at the top there, I pushed, so I took a point of stress, and you can see for every 2 points of stress, it's denoting that my dice will take damage. So because I got 2 points of stress, my 1 dice have taken damage, and that means that like those 3 like red squares there, once those all go away, those dice will break, and I can't use them until I fix them. It's a bad thing. You don't want your dice to break in this game. Again, there is a mechanic to fix them, but it's a massive pain. Okay, nobody has a great way of dealing with this, unfortunately. In fact, I think all of us are missing an interface skill, so this kind of sucks, but we're gonna have to just push through it. And in fact, push through it might actually be the move here. I might actually choose to incur some stress just to give my teammates a little bit of a better chance, because all of them are missing their interface skill. That means that all of them are going to lose dice value, but hopefully this will give us a little bit. Okay, all right, Nia, do something good for me here. Oh, okay, she took a point of stress. Seraphine? Okay, this is 50% neutral, 50% negative. All I need is a neutral win, and I can get that last thing. That's all I need is for this neutral to come through. Okay, thank God. Okay. The thrumming, pulsing interior of the drone goes still for the first time since you boarded it. You look across at Seraphine and Nia and share a smile. You all exhale so loudly it can be heard over the suit's shared comm channel. The drone is dead. Oh, one less piece of Conway's shit to worry about, Nia grins. We killed it. Don't get too excited, Seraphine cuts in. It was looking pretty rough when we got here. You make your way back out to the hull, the drone now faintly rolling in one direction, its stabilizers offline. Nia catches up with you as you glide towards the rig. We make a pretty good crew, Sleeper. We do. Nia grins widely. She punches you on the arm playfully. You reach the rig's airlock and take one last look at the drone's dark hull. It catches the light as it rolls into the vacuum. At some point in the near future, this drone will likely be smashed to pieces by one of the many asteroids of the belt, spread across this place as twinkling dust. The thought pleases you. As does the thought of all that cryo Hexport now owes you. Time to go collect. And our contract is complete. And now we can head out. We can press X to go back to the map. We can leave. We'll do -5 stress whenever we travel away from a contract, so that's a good thing too. You essentially get like a clean slate of stress here. And yeah, now we're gonna get paid. After docking at Hexport, Seraphim lets go of the controls and leans back in his chair. Nia leans over to you. Thank you, Sleeper. She stretches. I know you took a chance on me. Thanks for helping. Nia smiles an infectious smile. Feels good to make a contract work, Seraphim smiles. No matter how we pull it off. It's hard not to agree, and it feels better when the Hexport courier comes with a lockbox full of chits. Lane might still be hunting you, but this should help the effort to slip his net. Suddenly, you hear a familiar voice. Nia! This is her brother. Femi glides into view, approaching from the docks. He fixes you with a stare. What are you playing at, Sleeper? Nia wanted to come. You go to speak, but Nia drifts forward, cutting you off. Don't come throwing your weight around, Femi. I can make my own decisions. She glances back at you. Sleeper took me at my word, and I'm grateful. Femi is fuming. Did they now? He turns to you. Well, if you're working for Sleeper, I hope they paid you well. Nia looks away. Well, I asked, so... Femi smiles. Oh, so they aren't paying you. Seraphim crosses his arms. Let's keep this civil. You realize this is the first time he's meeting Femi. If we're being civil, seems like Nia's owed her share. Femi fixes you with a severe look. You know, and this is a thing where it's like, pay Nia a share or make some kind of excuse. We'll be fair, Nia put in probably the most work of the entire crew. You grab around a quarter of the chits from the lockbox and hold them out to Nia. She takes them sheepishly. Alright then, Femi smiles. We're good here. He turns to leave. Nia mouths a sorry and follows Femi across the docks. Seraphim watches them go. You sure know how to pick 'em, Sleeper. He shakes his head. He turns away and heads back along the docking bridge. I just hope we aren't going to end up a stack of cryo short when we need to get out of here. So there we go. We have completed a minor drive. We got another point here. And we now have 2 points available that we could use to level up some of our skills. If we spend 2 points, we can level up some of the skills related to our push ability. And if we had 4 points, we could increase some of our other skills. So like how we didn't have anything going for us with interface. If I had 4 points, I could make it so that we don't lose anything for our interface, right? Stuff like that. So that's how the basic gameplay works. That's the kind of big point of difference with Citizen Sleeper 2 is the new contracts system. And now at this point, we're going to head back to the main menu of the game and give some final thoughts, all right? See you there. Okay, and here we are back at the main menu. I hope y'all kind of were able to pick up what I was putting down there. This is, you know, a tough game to kind of like, it's the kind of game you really need to put your hands on to, I think, fully understand. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the video. I think it's way more complicated on paper than it is in practice. I love this kind of like tabletop RPG thing that Citizen Sleeper has going for it. And for me anyway, Citizen Sleeper 2, again, I've played through the whole thing now. Runtime, it's pretty much in line with the first game for me. It took me right around 10 hours for my first playthrough. Your mileage may vary. Your playthrough might be a little shorter, might be a little longer. You know, a lot of the game is reading, so again, if you don't like to read, Citizen Sleeper is probably not going to be for you. This is effectively a visual novel with tabletop RPG mechanics and dice rolling and things like this. So, you know, as you guys have kind of seen and hopefully gotten a sense for over the course of this video, there is a lot of gameplay going on here, but do be aware that, you know, a lot of this game is going to be reading, is going to be character work, but the good news is that the writing is so good. You know, I think a visual novel is ultimately only as strong as its writing, and Citizen Sleeper 2 has got, you know, it truly is best in class when it comes to that. So I think it's really extraordinary stuff here. I loved the characters. I think that the writing actually hits even harder in this game. I think that removing some of the like little barriers that the first game had, like not having to manage stabilizers, kind of, you know, simplifying a lot of the resource management in the game, I think worked so well for this. Citizen Sleeper 2, I think, makes so many little smart decisions and elevates the core gameplay so much that it really does wind up being a perfect sequel in my mind. Like, just this kind of perfect little thing that takes everything the previous game did and just simply improves it. And it really does give it like the weight and the gravitas. I mean, going out on the contracts with your crew and stuff, like that to me gives it such a feeling of really creating your own adventure in a way that the first game, as much as I love and continue to love the first game, it didn't have as much of that. You know, like you definitely still had plenty of player choice and different outcomes and things, but the first game felt more like a choose your own adventure book or something. This truly feels like you're playing your very own little tabletop D&D, Vampire the Masquerade, whatever kind of experience. And the amount of variation, the amount of player choice here, the ways things can go right, the ways things can go wrong, it's extraordinary. It is my early front runner for my favorite game of the year so far. I know the year just started, but it is currently my game to beat, and I would not be shocked one bit if by the time we get to the end of the year, this makes it into my top 10. So we'll see, but I absolutely adore this game. And I'll have more thoughts about it actually on our Nintendo podcast, the Koopa Cast. So if you're interested in Nintendo and indie games, hit the link in the description and check this out. And if you want to pick up Citizen Sleeper for yourself, if any of this looks or sounds cool to you, I highly recommend it. I've got a purchase link also in the video description. I want to thank fellow traveler once again so much for letting us cover this game and check it out. As you can probably tell, I'm very excited about it. I loved it. And hey, let me know if you dug this style of video. Again, I didn't know exactly how I was going to properly cover Citizen Sleeper 2 in video form. This is kind of what I landed on, and hopefully it was somewhat successful. Y'all can let me know in the comments below if you want to see more kind of like guided review coverage, I guess, kind of stuff like this. So anyways, this has been a look at Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. I've been Seth. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.